Hello and welcome to the All Monitor Brief. It's Tuesday, November 12th. I'm your host and producer, Kristen Tallman. Today's main segment is a conversation with Ezgi Akin, All Monitor's associate editor in Turkey. We'll talk about a proposed foreign agent law that could potentially threaten press freedom, or so critics are saying. But first, let's get you caught up on the headline. Rockets fired from Lebanon on Tuesday killed two men in their 40s in northern Israel, close to the town of Naria, first responders said. In Lebanon, Israeli strikes killed 11 people across the country Tuesday, including 5 in a rare attack on a house east of Beirut, where security officials said displaced people lived. Russian President Vladimir Putin appears to be seeking a foothold in the Middle East peacemaking as President-elect Donald Trump returns to the scene, though Israel has yet to decide whether to rejoice or worry over the prospect. Putin indicated on November 8th that Russia was in touch with all parties in the Middle East conflict in a bid to find a way to resolve it. He said, "We are in constant contact, literally with everyone. If not every day, then every week. Let's try to follow this path," without specifying any further. Al Monitor's Israel columnist Ben Caspi reports on that in more depth. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan, the host of the UN Climate Summit on Tuesday, defended its fossil fuels and the right of countries to exploit them as dozens of world leaders arrive for the COP29 conference. More than 75 leaders are expected, but the heads of many top populating nations are skipping the crunch climate talk, where the impact of Donald Trump's election victory is being digested. An Israeli finance minister Smotrich said on Monday that Donald Trump's election opens up an opportunity for an Israeli annexation of the occupied West Bank, and that he has already ordered his department to prepare for this annexation. Meanwhile, in the U.S., President-elect Donald Trump made 2 announcements on Tuesday, nominating key positions in the incoming administration. Former Republican presidential candidate and Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee was chosen as the next U.S. ambassador to Israel. Over the years, Huckabee has voiced opposition to the establishment of a Palestinian state and has referred to the occupied West Bank by its biblical names. Mike Huckabee is a longtime supporter of Israel, and much of his support is rooted in evangelical beliefs, as well as Mike Waltz, who has been tapped to be the next national security advisor. He's a former Green Beret and China hawk. And now, on to the main segment with Ezgi. Hey, Ezgi, welcome back to the All Monitor Brief.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, so it looks like Turkey's parliament is getting ready to debate a controversial so-called agent bill. What is the proposed law? Where is it in the legislative process? And how quickly could this move forward to be in place?
So the draft bill, which is also dubbed as foreign agent law, basically criminalizes all actions or content that harms Turkey's interests. These actions can come as an instruction of a foreign government or organization, or basically come in the line with their strategic interests. It doesn't specify either what these interests are, but define a very broad scope of areas that the country's national interests can be harmed. For example, harm can be done to not only Turkey's national security or defense interests, but also its cultural interests. A sub-parliamentary committee approved it late last month, and now it will be debated by the full floor this week. And if it's not withdrawn by the ruling party, it will likely be passed by the lawmakers of the ruling party and their allies at parliament who hold a simple majority.
Yeah, so I'm sure this goes beyond just calling baklava Greek. What, in terms of if it gets passed by the ruling majority party, the AKP, when would it go into place and it would just immediately set this into law?
Exactly, yes. Once Turkey's parliament approves a law, then the second step will be its final approval by the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And that means the law will come into effect immediately. But the main opposition Republican Republican People's Party will likely take it to the Constitutional Court, appeal the draft law in the Constitutional Court. But it's a different process and long process. And honestly, Turkey's civil society groups or right activists are not very hopeful that the Constitutional Court will strike down the law.
Yeah, you bring up another point, which I wanted to get to, which is there's been backlash and concerns raised, not just by Turkish civil society groups, but also international groups. What is prompting these groups to raise the alarm bells?
Exactly. I mean, almost every independent local and international civic groups have called on the government to withdraw the bill. The main criticism toward the draft law is its vague text, because they say every independent body in Turkey, from media outlets funded by international organizations or civil society groups, everybody can be subjected to criminal investigation under this law if it passes. Human Rights Watch last month released a report on countries that passed similar laws, including the EU member Hungary. And there are two outstanding patterns that can be spotted in all those countries. First of all of them have authoritarian leanings, such as India, Russia. And second, their civil society organizations have limited financial resources, and their activities mainly rely on foreign funding, whether it's from the European Union or other independent bodies. And when we look at that countries, the activities of the civil society is shrinking. I mean, by these countries, I have the countries with similar laws, we see that civil society activities in these countries are shrinking. For example, in Hungary, in response to increasing, this is an example we all know, so I guess it's worth mentioning. For example, in Hungary, in response to increasing pressure from the authorities, Open Society Foundation, funded by liberal philanthropist George Soros, decided to move its headquarters from Hungarian capital Budapest to Germany.
Right. So they've kind of watched this sort of law be problematic in other countries. Okay. And in terms of a timeline, if the Republican People's Party, the CHP, were to challenge it in the Constitutional Court, that would be after it has gone into law, correct? So there would be a period of time, if their case were to be successful, where the law would be in place.
Exactly. I mean, the law came into force immediately after it's published in Turkey's official gazette by the president's signature once the parliament approves the law. But then the appeal process can take months and years in Turkey. And also Constitutional Court rejected appeals in the past over such kind of controversial laws. For example, Turkey's disinformation law, which caused many journalists to face trials in the country over the past years, but the Constitutional Court rejected the appeal on that law last year. So hence pessimism.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a concerning time and proposed bill in Turkey.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, Ezgi, thank you so much for keeping our listeners up to the minute. We'll be sure to follow up on this and see where it is down the legislative process.
Thanks for having me again, Kristen.
That's it for today, Tuesday, November 12th. You can read all these stories and more impacting the region at allmonitor.com.